I think I'll start. I'm going to talk about advanced techniques of programming. How many loves programming here? I think everyone, I guess, since you're here. But my name is Pia. I am the female version of Pitari in Norway. Before I came to SAS, I had been working in Statistics Norway for many years, almost 10 years. And I also worked with the salary settlement in Norway, delivering the statistics into that. And I have been programming almost each day since 2004. So it's been a long journey. So it's natural that I, in the end, start in SAS, isn't it? After so many years. But no, I love it. Today I need to sit this way because I'm switching between PowerPoint presentation and coding, so I need to kind of jump in between, so I apologize for that. But I hope you can forgive me for that. And please ask questions during the presentation if you have any. So first I'm going to talk about SAS function, and I think that SAS function is really powerful. The character function is kind of funny to work with, like any alpha and any digit is really powerful, more than you could realize. And I will show you some, I will actually show you some example of that afterwards. So I don't know if all of these functions are familiar for you. I will just concentrate on the character functions today, but there's a link there to all the functions in SAS, so you can take a look afterwards. So I'm going to show the count. I don't know if you have used that before, but it counts the number of times a text string occurs in the text. And then you have the count C and the count W. W, that counts the number of words in a text character string also. So, and then you have the find function, and you have different, you have find C, and you have find W. So find searches through the text to find the first occurrence of a text string in a text, and then return the first position. So you will see example of that as well. Other useful function is, as I mentioned, any alpha, any digit, and the length, which counts the position in a string. How many places is it? And the combination of all of these functions is really good. So I will jump now over to the code, and I will actually start with a function that it took me many years before I actually started using it, and it's really easy. It's the function called repeat. So first I want to repeat Happy New Year 3 times just to show you how it works. And then I don't know if you have used that, but probably you have. If you have like a lot of numbers and you want to have zeros before or to fill up with zero after the numbers, you can use the put function and the set5 to indicate that it's going to be 5 places altogether. So that you probably have done. But what I didn't know was that you have the possibility to actually do it when you have also character in a string. So a combination of numbers and characters. So if I have this one instead, like this, and I want to have zeros in front of that string, I can use the repeat. I can say it's the zeros I want, and then I can define how many. So 5 minus the length of the string, because I want everything to be 5 places. So in the end then I get this result where you get zeros in front of the string. So I think that's a neat way to do it. I use the put, as I said before, but not this one. And then you have the any alpha and any digit. And I used to work in Statistics Norway and a lot with consumer price index and scanner data. Scanner data is a lot of data and it's good data, but they only have to each EN code. It's a text string connected to each EN code, but you have no information about the unit or the quantity. But if you're lucky, it could be in the text string connected to the EN. So we had trouble because of the consumer price index, we needed those numbers. So we needed a way to get those numbers out from the text and make it so solid proof that you're sure you're doing it the right way, that you get the right number as well. So if we kind of start, you will get the code for this afterwards, but if I just make a little data step first, I have this text and my task is to get the numbers out. So if I now go down a little bit, I will start just showing some of the function I use in this example. I can just do that one as well. So first, I'm just doing easy step, showing the different function. So any alpha, what does that do? It gives me the first place of a character, so the position. So in the first thing here, you start in place 1, and then I ask for any digit, which gives me number 11 because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 places before the number. And then I also ask for the total length of the string, which is 32. And then I also will use substring. And substrings, you can indicate which place you're reading and how long you are going to read, how many positions. So I ask for the 5, and that's the T, and then I'm actually reading a space also, so the result is call. The next one is a scan. Scan is also useful because you can scan and you can indicate which number of words you wanted to get out. So I scan it and say I want the second word. And then in the end, you have the tran word. And then I change the text ringness to be the map. So that is the useful function I'm going to use in my example. So let's go down to the code. Because to do this, to just get the numbers, and I want the word after the numbers to know the unit and the quantity. So what I do is I first, I don't understand. Yeah. Is that okay, Frans? Okay. So what does this code do? I go through this one step by step because the first I make an M1. I say I read from the place where the digits are starting, and then I'm reading the rest of the text from that. So it's a combination of substring and any digit and length. And then I say that I want M2 to be the first. I scan it, and the first is the M1. And then the M3, I want the word after the digit. So I want it to be the number 2 word of that M1. And then I make myself an R0, which is kind of the rest of the text, because in the text there could be several numbers, and some of the numbers I don't even care about. I don't want them, but I need to take all the numbers out and the word afterwards. So I make myself an R0. So that's my rest after the first number and the word after that. So it's the rest of the string. And then I make it like a if loop saying that I want it to be the quantity if any alpha of M2. So I'm saying that if that's bigger than 0, then do, else I just have the quantity and unit. If any alpha is not bigger than 0, I need to do something more to get the quantity and unit of that. Because maybe when you do the first part, you get the scan, maybe that consists not just of a digit, but a combination of digit and character as well. So, and then I do it once more, like a second part, because I know I have more. So you can see that this is ending up in a macro in the end, but we can run this and take a look at the result. So you can see like M1, I start reading from the first digit, 6, and then read the rest of the text. And then I'm able to take out the first digit, because it was just a digit, 6. And then I have the R null with the rest of the text, and then I read, and then I set the quantity 1 and the unit 1, and then I try to do it once more, another loop, to get the rest of the digit as well. So, so this is, so you see like R null is you're reading M4 is from 1.5 and the rest of the text. And then you get a new quantity and digit as quantity 2 and unit 2. Has anyone worked with the text string like this? Or is it useful? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. But so you see it's the pattern. So if you have a lot of numbers in your text, you should make a macro of this, of course. So that's the end of my program, is to make a macro. To make a macro, I kind of need to be careful of how I define my in data set and out data set, of course. But so this is just a macro of what I just showed you. So if you're really interested in seeing how this works, I think you should just run it, because you get all the code. But in the end, I also have a macro, because when you're working with unit and quantity, like kilo can be written so many different ways, so you need to kind of clean it up. So I think I might just run this program all together, and we can take a look at the end result. I struggle a little bit to get it. So this was not the whole result. I think that I will just mark it once, and I don't know why it didn't run through everything. Okay, now it went okay. So in the end, I have 4 quantity, because I asked the macro to go 4 times in this example. So I have 4 quantity and unit, but you can see not everyone is a quantity and a unit that I want to use. So it's not completely finished, the program. You need to work maybe more to be sure that you're getting the right numbers and the right quantity and unit to go on with. But it's a good example of those function, at least. So I also have the count to just show how that works. So first, I'm using the same data set on this. So I'm just using the same text to make it easy. So this text, and first I want to know how many times the word gram is in this text. And so I have the count function of the string and the word gram. And then I also want to know how many words are in the text string. So I use the count W. And then I want the start position. So I also choose to use the find function in this example. So this one. So as you can see in the result, it is 0 words of gram in the first string, but it's 6 words and the position is 0. But on the next one, you have one word of the word gram, and it starts as the 6th word in that text number 2 here, and the position where gram is starting is position 30 in the text. So that was an example of how to use those. Let's see if we go further down in the program. I actually want to do this multiple times because, as you saw, it is multiple times, maybe grams in the text. So you want to do it multiple times. So then you need to also have if and do loops at the end here to kind of see if you have multiple times of the words. So it's actually just the same thing. I'm asking for gram and I want to know the position where gram is starting and so on. So this is just, you can take a look and at the result. So if we go to the number 2 here, we see it's just one word gram. If we go at the end here, you see you have 2 words that are gram. So in the first result, you get number of gram is 2, and the position is 5, and it's not the number 2 word. And then you get it again because you have another one as well. So this is a way of doing almost the same as I did in the first example with any digit and any character. Now the next example is not getting the word after gram, but getting the word before gram, or the text that you want to find. So again, I use the count to count the number of times gram appears, and then I use the find to get the position of the word, and I want to find the word scanned until the gram is found in the text, and I'm not counting the delimiters in between. So then I have an if and do loop that's going to get the word before the gram. So I use a combination of find W and find and a scan actually. So if we do this, take a look at the result. I don't think it's run, is it? Yeah, it's run. Okay. So the number of gram is, if I want to go to the last one here since it's 2 words of gram. So it's the number of gram is 2, and the first position of the word gram is number 5, and then the word scanned is 2, and then the word before is 200. So that's the first one. I see now it is the same one in the last one, but you have another gram which is starting at the position 23, and the number of words are 5 before the gram, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the number of gram, and the word before is 200. So that's how that works. Okay, and I will go down again because it's kind of cool also that you can split the text into different parts. and that is by using the scan, actually. So if I want to kind of strip the text, I use that in an example of ULITIP, if you have looked at that sometimes, because if you have like different words, then you kind of need maybe to divide the text into different parts, and then you can do this split by using the scan. So you use the count C, and then you do an if space if the count of the text appears, then you just put the name equal text. If it doesn't appear, then you do this do loop to kind of divide it. So let us take a look. So if I look at this first one, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blanks in between the words, and that's why you then divide it into 5 different a new column called name with the 5 different divided text. So the first one is coca, and the next one is cola, and then the 6th, and then the liter, and then the Ringqvist. So that is also a good thing sometimes to use. So now I'm finished with the function, and we will go over to my presentation again, just to talk a little bit about Perls first. So I don't know, have many used Perl before? Or yeah. So Perl is a separate programming language, and that is also good to manipulate text strings. And this manipulation is often or are using a regular expression. And a regular expression is a string that defines the pattern or patterns you're looking at. So per regular expression are powerful, but also can be a little bit compact and cryptic. And there are many per regular expression, as you can see on this slide. And we will look more on the regular function and call routines. So per regular expression can be used in languages other than SAS as well. So there's a link to a website where you can actually test your irregular expression before you use it to see if you are getting it right. So we are going to go through PRX match, which search text strings for patterns given by regular expression and returns the position where the pattern starts. And if the pattern is found, is not found, then you get 0. PRX parse compiles a per regular expression for later use in then another PRX function. PRX change that exchange text string according to pattern given by regular expressions. So every character you put into a per regular expression has a meaning, and here is the definition of some of them. So we see the slash D that matches a digit between 0 and 9, and slash D, for instance, matches a non-digit such as letter or special character. So they have a meaning, everyone. So I will go back to my presentation in Enterprise Guide. So if we use the same data set as I've used up to now, what I want to do is I want to change a word by using the PRX change. So I want to change Ringqvist with Mac. So I can run this. So this is it's almost doing it's doing the same as the tran word function. So it's different ways of doing actually the same thing. So I changed the word Ringqvist with the Mac, with the PRX field. So that's the substitution. But if we're looking at per regular expression, it's kind of nice to have cell phone numbers to just show how they work. So I just make a little data set with phone numbers like this. And then I define different Perl expression. So what do I say here? I say actually that I have a cell phone number that I want to find, which I give a new variable, but the expression is defined like 2 numbers, then slash, 3 numbers, slash, 2 numbers, slash, and then 4 numbers at the end. But you can see you can write the numbers in different ways when you use per regular expression. I could have used 0/9 and parentheses, but you can also do it like this. So different ways of doing the same thing. And the other one is a little bit different because let's say it's like this one. I define it to be 47 in front, and if it's not going to have a value on expression 3. So if I kind of run this one, so you define the expression first, and then you search for the with the PRX part on the expression to find if it's a match or not. And then you use the PRX match as we used in the beginning. So if we look at the result, you can see that the first phone number is in the lock number 1, which was defined like that one with 2, 3, 2, 4. And then you can see it was a little bit, you can see number 2 number is not in the lock 1, but it's in the defined lock 2. And if we see on the lock 3 is the one that was having 47 in front, and it's this one, but you are also asking for 47 and then 3 and then 2 and then 3. So this is how you can define the regular expression. So if we go further down in my program, I am not sure how many is actually working with cell phone numbers like this, and it's useful. But my next example is from the food data set. So I want to find the same thing that I did in the beginning. I want to find the quantity in unit. So I define a regular expression like that, like it's starting with an R, actually the letter R, and then a 1, and then a word. The third character is between A and Z, and then 5. So let's see. So it's going to be 5 letters. So let's see if we can find that in that data set. So it found out that the expression is defined like that, and the pattern found 1, and the word is starting, it's Ringqvist. So that is okay because you ask for R, E, and then a letter between A and Z, and 5 places. So you get that one. And then in the end, I also have an example to find. I think I did the gram there. Let me see. I want to, I try to do the same thing again. And I also want to find the quantity. So the thing that comes after the defined expression. So that's a combination of substring and Perl expression. So then I get the quantity. It's not truly what I really wanted because I want to have the unit and quantity for themselves, but I'm on the way to doing the same thing as I did with the any alpha and any digit. So that is another way of doing it. So, okay, then we can match, then we can take arrays as well. Any questions about Perl? How many are working with Perls in regular expression? 1, 2, okay. It's kind of, you can kind of get the same result. I would have used the function instead of the Perl, but I know many knows Perl from before, so maybe it's easier to do it like that. I don't know. Okay, then it's arrays. So we will look at arrays, which is used where there is a need to use many variables of the same type, maybe. And an array is a list of variables, and you can't mix characters and numeric variables in an array. So by using array, it's possible to make data processing easier and make programs shorter and safer. So we can have arrays in 1 dimension or in 2 dimensions. So an array expression specifies the name of an array and the number of elements and columns in the array. And in addition, you can specify array elements. And array is entered into a data set by first defining the array and then referencing the array. So 2-dimensional arrays is also very good, and especially if you are going to merge 2 different data sets, it can be really good to use array in 2-dimensional. I will show example on that. So this is the advantage and disadvantage by arrays. And I just want to show you at the end, I have some links to different documentations and papers that you can take a look at. So I will go back to my examples. So the first one, how many of you have used array? A little bit? Good. So I have a new data set. I have a program here, and in the first program, I defined the data sets. So we can take a look at the data set first. So the data set is consisting of name of a person, and then you have the weight, and then that could be low, high, and then you have blood pressure, which is low, high, and then you have pulse, low, high, and then you want to count it, and that you could have done with an if sentence. So I want to say if weight is high, then high count is 1, and if blood pressure high, then high count plus 1 again, and then the same for pulse and cholesterol and glucose. So then you're counting the highs in each row. So I can run this. So I see in the first, I just have 1 high. In the second, I have 3 highs in different variables, and then 2 in the last row. So if we're doing this like and with arrays, it's smart to then define the arrays first. So the array consists of 5 different variables: weight, blood pressure, pulse, and so on. And then I kind of count 1 to 5, and I count the highs. So this is doing the same as this data set with if sentence, but now I do it with array instead and get the same result. So the next example, I had to have new data set, so we can take a look at the data set first. So the data set consists of different temperatures, 1 to, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. And you also have precip variables as well. And what you want to do is define 4 different you define area with 4 different variables, temp 1 to temp 4, so I'm not using everyone. And then I also declare an area that is empty, which is going to consist of 4 different variables. And in those variables, I want to calculate the Celsius instead, so it's Fahrenheit, month, and minus 32 multiplied by 5 and divided on 9. So I'm using the defined area in this calculation and putting it in my empty arrays. And then I have a format at the end there. So the result of this is looking like this. So we get a new, this temperature is the same as before, but you have the temp Celsius. It is the temp C1 is the Celsius of month 1. Yeah, so that was that. But another way is like also you can calculate a sum and then use the sum in the new calculation in your empty array. So what I do is I define the array of the 4 different variables, make the total sum, and then define 4 new arrays, and then I calculate the new variables with the sum of, so if it's each percip quantity 1 divided by the total sum, and so on, the same for the 3 others. So this is looking like this. You have the variables which you defined first in the area, and then you have the total, which is just a sum of all of the first 4 variables. And then you have the one that you calculate into the new defined variables, percip quantity 1, which is a percentage. So this is how you can use calculation and make new variables by using empty arrays. So another way is that you can rotate data by using arrays. So if I take a look at my print here, I have Oslo down here. I have also the different years, and then I have 4 variables, which is the quarterly quarter 1 to 4. So maybe instead of having the quarter this way, I want to rotate it so the quarter gets the other way down here. So this is done in this data set. So I define the arrays and I do it by quarter 1 to 4, and I actually rotate it. So we can take a look at it. So city and year is not changed, but you have made a quarter, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have actually just rotated the last 4 variables down the other way. So that is also in a way, good way to use arrays. Let me see on the last one, I can drop that. You can take a look at it at the end yourself. I just want to show you 2-dimensional array as well. If you have done that without using array, you probably know this code. You first sort 2 different data sets, and then you use merge to kind of merge those data sets together. It's the data with weather information daily and monthly. And then I also calculate the difference between daily average and the temperature monthly. So this is done like that by using book sort and data set. If you should do it by using array instead, you can use a data set in, and that is just the one that is the sweat weather Stavanger daily. So this one I'm using as a set in to my data set, but instead of using the monthly data set, I'm plugging in my temperatures in an array instead. So it gets a two-dimensional array in by merging those the array defined and the data set you are reading in, and then I'm also making the difference. So the result of this is that you are managing to get the merged data set with an array solution. So that was my last one, Peter.
Okay, so next on the agenda is me and Microsoft 365. So my name is Daniel. I work in the Swedish office. I'm a colleague of Peter's, obviously, and Frans. Should I get taller? No? Yes? Yeah. Can you move closer? No? No? So I work in the Swedish office. We have the office in Stockholm. I worked at SAS and with SAS for 30 years. I've seen it once in a magazine before I joined SAS, so that's totally new technology for me. So it's been a fun trip. The year of the internet, 1994. So lots of things happened. Client server and corporate processing and SAS internet and everything that's happened. But coding is the same. It's the same data step. And I'm going to talk about two things, SAS and Microsoft 365. I think that's what it's called. It was called Office 365, and now they went back to sometimes it's just M365 or whatever, but you know what it is. And I'm going to talk and show you how you get that to get and then file to SharePoint and OneDrive. It's basically the same technology. So the slides here are more for documentation, and we'll have a look at some few things that are linked to. Firstly, our boss, Chris Hammendinger, he's a good boss because he's really clever, and he produces a lot of really nice articles on blogs at SAS. Most of you probably know Chris Hammendinger, who is, and so on. When Enterprise Guide was released, I worked 5 years as a kind of wild tester, 20% of my time. One of my proudest moments when that was settled, that I actually got paid for spending 20% of my time just trying to kill Enterprise Guide before new releases and find bugs that scripts don't find by using it violently. So I've been kind of close to Chris for many years. So there's an article in SAS Communities that Chris has written, and a video where he shows really detailed how you set this up, because there are some things you really need to set up before you can use the code. It could be simpler. There's nothing we can do about it. It's the way Microsoft 365 work. I'll show you how you do that. The code example that Chris Hammendinger has made is also available from his GitHub directory, which is there, but I'm standing in the way so you can't see anything. I'm sitting down now. And basically what you do, you download the toolkit, and there's a couple of files. There's a sample SAS program that you start modify, and there are some files that you just need to point to do things that needs to be done. But everything is kind of contained in this sample SAS program that basically use proc HTTP a lot to pull down things or send up. So you watch the video one time without doing anything, then go back, and when you kind of get, okay, there are 10,000 things I didn't understand, but you kind of get a grip of what it's about. And then I just wrote some kind of times there in the videos, like 320 into the in the video, he talks about how you register new client application. So there are lots of new things for you, probably, like the Azure portal. You've never been there because you have no reason to be there. You need to go in there to register that you actually want to run that talks to Azure, and you need a really long string that is a kind of ID that allows you to do that. So that's the manual step. And when you follow those steps, you get an authorization code, and he shows that 1020 into the video. And that code is your key. And if you would, some circumstances, if your password changes or if you move to another computer, you would need to do that step again, but very rarely. But sometimes you would realize it doesn't work. But if you don't change anything, if you set this up on a Windows server or a Linux server, whatever, it will just continue to work. But if some things around you change, you need to just do that last piece. You go in, paste a link in your browser, and it just redo the URL, and you have this new URL key up there. But everything is explained in the video, really in good detail. Then when you run, when you get this code, you put that into your file, one of the files in this catalog of files for this technology, and it's just refreshed automatically every time. So it's a setup, and then it just works. It sounds really complicated. And the first time you look at the video, you think it's really complicated. But just watch it another and a third time. One thing you do need is the tenant ID. So if you're running Microsoft 365, that means that you're in Azure. And so if you're allowed and authorized, you can go into the Azure portal and Azure Active Directory and find the tenant ID. So that's the really long ID to your Azure environment. And you don't want to give that to anyone else. You will get fired probably. Yeah. So if you can't find it, go to your admin and ask what's the tenant ID. So that's the key to your Azure. Hackers can probably do something with that code, but you need to be able to log in as well to make use of it. But obviously you shouldn't show it. And this is kind of just a reminder. What I'm going to show you when you run this code, what you basically do. I could say that first because there's no directories. So when you move from file servers, you look into your K colon or P colon or // stat server, and there's data program. There's a lot of folders, and you go into folder, and you have a subfolder and a subfolder, and you just have this path to this program that is /things /A/B/C, and then the program. But it doesn't work that way. You have to find the key, really long string, to the first folder, and within that folder there are subfolders. But you can't point to your file, let's say cars.xlsx. You can't say get this file from Azure down to my PC. You need to find the unique ID to that file within the folder. And you do that by going to the first folder and then the next and the next, and eventually you find the ID to the file cars.xlsx. And then you don't need to do the other stuff. Dig from one folder to the next, to the next, and next. And that's what I say here. You just need to get the IDs, and you could actually go into Azure and just pick up the file by browsing your file content in the OneDrive in your web browser. But there could be a lot of reasons for you for doing probably that programmatically in SAS. If you know, I need to find the files that have a name of ABC 1977 something, and that you would get a lot of IDs, and then you would like to pull them down. But all you really need is a key to a certain file to download it. So if we just look at these resources, here's the article that Chris Hemdinger has written, and there's another link, so you get the video just in full screen. And he has a lot of useful links here to the Azure portal. And there's an application called Microsoft Graph. I never understand this because for me a graph is a bar chart, but Graph is also a database, so it's just mysterious. Well, it is what it is. If you go in there, you can play with these different commands and keys, and it's really fun. Doesn't make it, it's not useful, but if you're really down into really need to understand what you can do with it, because in there you can just find info about a person, everything in Azure, folders, persons, resources, all sorts of things. So have a look at that and the documentation and so on. So this is your starting point. Look at video once, look at it a second time, and when you feel that you're comfortable going into those times that I suggested in the PowerPoint, you'll see where you do the stuff that you really need to do. And never been here, so it's obviously weird. Azure portal. So what you need to do is get a key. So when you run proc HTTP in SAS, you need to kind of say, yeah, I'm authorized. This application is allowed to talk to Azure. It doesn't know it's SAS XD. It's not like you say, you are allowed my SAS XD installed on my C drive program files. That's not the way, but you just say, okay, I create an application here, and I get the key for that. I call it SAS access to MS 365. I can call it whatever I do. And what you do is you go in and say, I want to have an application. Yes. What? Children? Yeah, but I'm not going to show you any details on this. Yeah, so you go in here and you create an application and you give it certain properties that it's allowed to read and write and so on. We're not going into details. Just follow what Chris shows you in the video. And in the ideal world, some admin would be able to do this for the whole group of you, for any user. And I'm not sure if that's possible. I talked to Chris about that. He didn't know either. So, but some admin might that is really skilled in the Azure world could script this in a way so it's automatically set up for everyone. But I couldn't find that. I didn't need it either because I just needed it to work for me. So there's a certain kind of setup time to get this to work. But when it's done, it's done. It's just it's unknown steps. You haven't seen it before, so it does take some time. Okay. So that's the resource. Here is sample programs. You just copy them to use. And I won't show anything more about that. You just follow exactly what he says. So going into SAS. So can you still see, or am I in the way? No, okay. So this is all the files in when you pull down Chris's file. So there are some macros that will be called. You don't do anything to them. There's a config. There's the setup procedure that you follow once. And there's a sample for OneDrive and one sample file for SharePoint. It's basically the same thing, but it's just some things that are slightly different. But it's the same procedure. You go to the root of where you are, and then you find, okay, I want to go into the first folder in the SharePoint the directory that would be general or documents. and then you just dig down into the next and into the next. Oh, these things I just added myself. So the setup, you just follow the steps and do this. And this is the place where you take this generated URL, paste that into Chrome or Edge or whatever web browser you use, and it just changes, and you get this key that you copy. Again, it's all in the video, so don't mind what I'm telling you, really. You just follow the step. It takes a while. I think I've scared you enough now. So here I can close this so I don't get confused by all the files. So I'll push F11. So going from the top, I've downloaded the files. I put them in CDemo Set Connect to MS Office 365. That's my catalog where I put all these files. So and I can run this local. I can obviously run it on against a remote server. It doesn't matter. It works anywhere. So I run this code, and you see all these comments. I didn't remove them. They are there so that you can also follow the code. These are Chris's own comments. What's happening now? What's the next step? So just take this slowly. So I'll just start the process, and this is where it actually refresh this token with these key strings we have. So now it's up and running. If it needs to refresh it, it refreshes it. And the first thing we do is to access OneDrive, and I will get the ID to kind of the root. So I'll just run this. And zoom this up also. It's not very exciting. You get this ID, and this is the ID column value we all the time need to go into the next folder and the next folder, and eventually it's an ID to a file in my case. So now we can have a look at it by just a little SQL snippet here that select the drive from there, and we can have a look at how that looks. So that there is the no. Didn't I run it? Sorry, I missed the key. There it is. So there's a drive ID. So we'll just continue then. Okay, so now I'm where I'm in the minimum case. I will show you later when we've done all the steps. I'll restart my session and just go to this point where I get the drive ID, because to get this file, which I want to download, cars.xlss, which is SAS help cars, obviously, that we always use. I just need the ID to the file. So I need the ID to my instance of OneDrive. But to get there, the first time, I need to get to that file. And there's no shortcut but to get to the top here. So we'll start and just find all the paths. And when you look at the output, I think we'll keep it small. You see here that we have a column that says download URL. And if it's empty, you would realize it's a folder. If it has here a web URL, it is a file. And you could see there's book 1, and I have fan stock, and I have cars somewhere in the beginning as well. So this is the first level, and there's no easy way to get to cars. I need to know where it is. Okay, so I need to go to that folder. So I just continue down into the fans directory, which I know is here as a catalog. It is there, and it's case sensitive, so I need to spell it fans uppercase, if that's how it's spelled. Everything is case sensitive. So I just run in SQL and get that value, put that into a macro variable folder ID, and will list. So my own comments are in Swedish. So getting the ID to the folder that has the name of fans. With that, I run this, and then we get the contents in the folder fans. So it's no mystery. It's just work. So in that folder, I have the file. So now I'm kind of ready to just to get the file down. So in my case, I just changed the code slightly by adding a macro variable here to make it more flexible. So I want to get this file. So I run this code. I get the ID to the name cars and put that into the macro variable file ID. And we can have a look at that. Hopefully it's okay. It was okay 5 minutes ago. So now I have the root. I went to the fans folder. I got the ID to the cars XLS, which it looks good. So now I do a file name and proc HTTP, get this file, and we import that by pointing to the file name that we made there. And here we are. Good old cars. Did anyone understand what I did? Yeah. So it's not complicated. It's just uncommon. You haven't done it before. So, but mostly the steps in the beginning. It's kind of the real strange things. And I will do a demo, start from scratch and show you that you can go exactly and fetch the file. But I'll just continue by also uploading a file to my OneDrive. And I look in my OneDrive, I have a file called Iris. I will create that again, so I'll just delete that first. I call that _iris, so it comes first in the list. And I will go back and I set my macro variable target file, iris XLSX, and I just run proc print and create an ODS Excel file. And then we just send this file up to OneDrive. And I will send that before, well, we can run that. And as you see in the code, the URL is the drive ID. That's the first thing we generated in the beginning. And folder ID, well, that's the folder that I got the ID to in my run here. So obviously you could hard code some other value if you wanted to put it somewhere else. But in my code, it just upload iris to the folder that I got the ID to the last time around, and then the target file here, iris. You can just have a look at my web browser and see what happened. And there's iris. And then this example file just continues how you kind of go back there. But if we switch to SharePoint, sorry, no, I was going to go out of full screen and I'll disconnect and I'll connect again. And I'll just run the code up to the point that we get the drive ID. So that's kind of the ID pointed to the root of my OneDrive. So now I can go down to the point where I download cars. So I have the drive ID. I must have that. That's in the URL But as I gone through this, now I know the file. It could be an Excel file, and that you have kind of some metadata for your applications, conversion rate for currency or whatever stuff that you need to read in. I do that myself in systems I have. So you just hard code this because you already found out the ID to the file you want to download. So and we can have a look at that. So I'll run that first. And we can have a look at the file ID. What? File ID, what? I just ran that. Didn't I run that? This is so amusing. I'm really sure I did run that. Why does it complain? Okay. Let's try again then. I won't check the log because it should work. Yeah, no. So now I just set file ID without going through the folders and so on, and just run this. There it is. So do I need to find the drive ID every time? No, obviously that is also probably something that you could hard code. So that's OneDrive, and SharePoint is basically the same. The thing that is slightly different is that you need to know, and it looks a bit strange. There's some documentation here about how this works. If you go into Teams and you look at files, and then you can click open in SharePoint, and you see the web URL. Perhaps your SharePoint is called really fun stuff with a blank between and so on, but the folder name would be compressed. It wouldn't look exactly the same. And I think, like in our own Teams, if you have renamed it, it would still have the original name in the file structures and so on. And if you rename a file, this is not to forget, if you rename cars XLSS to iris.xls, it still has the same ID. But if you rename a file on your file server, it's another file. This is not how it works in this world. When the file is created, it's created. Then you need to delete it if you want to call it something else and point to that. So the ID, the name is just, it's like the label of a data set in SAS. Looks different, but it's the same file. So just be careful. So I'm pointing here to our host name, SAS Office, and I'm pointing to a site in SharePoint called Nordic Pipeline. So you need to find out what the name is. And sometimes it's not really what you thought it would be. It's slightly different. But other than that, it's kind of the same thing. You get that, and you get the drive, and I go down here can go down to paths, and I have a lot of here's a drive. In this case, I have general and I have test, and I want to go into the general, which everyone would have, and I would find stuff that is in metadata, and here we also can see that we have two files here. It's a JPEG files and a couple of folders, and I want the metadata. So I have this folder ID. So in this case, I'm actually going to a subfolder. So I just create folder ID 2 and then folder ID 3 or whatever you need to kind of dig down into the structure. So I get that, and then I want to go down into the next folder ID 3. And eventually here I want to find just continue, and I want to pick this file called CA team and import that. So it's very much the same. It's just instead of just getting the root of your OneDrive, you need to say what SharePoint, because when I run as my, I'm not sure, I'm not the expert. You're an admin. I don't know. I suppose as an admin, you can be authorized to go to someone else's OneDrive. But when I run this, I get the root, the drive ID to my OneDrive. Yeah. But I mean, if you are an admin, I suppose you can be authorized to go to someone else's OneDrive to do stuff. And then that might look a bit different. But in my case, I just get the ID to my OneDrive. That's all I have access to. And here's the file that I downloaded. So the same, that's slightly different in the beginning. I've said it so many times that this is so complicated, so you're probably not there to try it. And obviously, it would work just as nice as VS Code here or SAS Studio. It doesn't matter. You're running kind of batch code. You're just running code. It works exactly the same way. We won't spend time on that. So next topic. On my program networks, I usually just have a short update on VS Code because there's always something new as it's every month or something. So last week with that update, you know, if you run on your local SAS, if you run VS Code and just connect to your SAS on your desktop, on your laptop, sorry, or workstation, as well as if you connect it to a Windows server, you now have the support for looking at your libraries and viewing datasets. And that was new. That has worked for a long time, connecting to VIA 4 and also VIA 3.5 or SAS 9 on Linux. But that's a more complicated setup with security authorization keys and stuff. This is just right off, just works. So it's really, really nice. If you haven't tried VS Code, do it, because it's a really nice experience with the SAS notebook thing you have, like inspired from the Python Jupyter World with text, and you can just insert SQL and lists and outputs. It's really, really, really fun. So anyway, okay. Sending messages to MS Team. If you use Teams, you've probably seen people that have sent just an ordinary email to Teams, and you, in some channel somewhere, and you see the message, and it also there's a small, you can download the original message, and it works. It's good enough. I mean, it does the job. So that's one way of doing it. And the other way is obviously using SAS or something else. And again, we will use proc HTTP by sending a JSON structure, we can send a message and taking control of I mean, stuff you can do in Teams. You can set up a survey or all kind of things you can do there. You can do that by sending this JSON structure. You need to figure that out. That's not a SAS problem. You need to kind of understand what you need to do. So there's a website, a Microsoft site, where you can design these cards that they call it, with the greeting cards, and it can be a polling card and some templates that you can play with. So sending, I will show you all this obviously. Sending an email, you just need to understand, so what is the email address to this channel? And it could look something like this. I scrambled my own. And you just have an email and you send that. And the other way is by using SAS and running a proc HTTP. then you need an ID, you need a webhook set up. So then you go and click Manage Channel. Might be that you're not authorized to do it, then someone has to do that for you. I think you need to be the owner or co-owner of the channel to click to see the option Manage Channel, and you click Edit and you search for web or webhook and you just click Add and you give it a name and then you get this long ID. That's all. It's really simple. Really, really simple compared to Microsoft 365 setup. If you forget that long ID, you can then next time just do Manage Channel, Edit, and click Configure to the left instead of creating a new one, and just click on Configure, and then you have this long URL in the bottom. But to play with it, perhaps you can just create a new Teams group or whatever. But I mean, you do it or you get help to do it. And again, it's just an ID, and you give it a name. So so if you want to take control, then this is basically how it looks. I will show you again, obviously. So there's a file name, some options, and you just run a proc HTTP with the in options and with this JSON structure with lots of text. And it could look like this. Just a simple one, or just from a mail. This is just an email sent, and this is more the structured way. So you can get buttons, and you can obviously get anything that you can see in Teams that you can do today with applications, the add-ins that you have. So this is just one small thing. So again, there's my webhook and there's my key to that. So that's my setup, really easy to that channel. What I can see if I create a new channel, just test and add a webhook to that webhook is valid for the whole Teams team, because the subfolders are channels, I think. So whatever the naming structure. So here's a really small one. Let's start with the even. So I got some assistance, and this translation should be okay. But it looks kind of weird when I do that with Google Translate, and then I just add a word and everything's changed. So I don't know, but it's okay. The demo today, and then it's a song and an artist and an album. I didn't translate that album. So the scenario here is that we have a few of us. We meet on Wednesday evenings and just play some rock and roll. We haven't played AC/DC. It's more difficult than you might think. So the idea was okay, this is a good kind of scenario or sample information. So I want to send that to our Teams group, send suggestions for new songs to play. Well, it turned out we just add it to an Excel file because it's easier, but it's fun enough. So I just add some and a Spotify link and a YouTube link, and I will run that. You know what I did? I pressed F3.
F3?
Yeah, it didn't work.
I wonder why.
No standardization.
I thought you created macro also to Outlook to send it as F3.
So where are we? Yeah, okay. So there's the mail.
Oh.
So I mean, okay, it's good enough. There's the text I send, and you have the view original email. That's the way it works. I just sent an email by getting the address to this channel, which I did like this, get email address. And you just copy it. So that's easy enough. So that's the one. This one I didn't really have the energy to translate. Doesn't really matter. And did I have the URLs? Yeah. So in the end of the presentation, actionable message designer, and there's some sample So if we just open that one, and we can open this one. Here you have a lot of samples, a blank card, message card, playground, Azure websites. It looks a bit dead. Okay. So these are just kind of examples that folks have done. Here's a survey, and if you click this, you would get here and you would be able to see the final JSON code. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. What I found out, so I started to play with these and design my own, because I think if you just want to do your own, a blank card, you can say, okay, I want to have some text, and you can drag this around, and it didn't work. You get an HTTP response code and say, and you have no idea why it doesn't work. You just get a 400 or 100, whatever it is. So eventually I found a sample that worked, which I could modify. And I don't know why, because I'm not an expert in designing cards for message. But I don't know, there's probably another way of doing that, perhaps going from an existing message. I don't know. So again, what I'm showing you is how you send a JSON structure that is valid to Teams, and then it would work. So I obviously did something wrong. So you can play with it, and you have different actions to get buttons and so on. So they can be really useful. And here's also, again, Chris has an article on the SAS dummy, and he used this a lot also in production. And an example code, and it's much more complicated than my example. So he has an example code that really does what he needs to do, and it's a bit bigger. So in my case, again, a suggestion of a song to rock on the castle. It's a theme color, and it's the title, and then well, I have this blank, 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 and I point to an image because that's kind of fun. And then there's a value pairs, the song, the artist, the album, and just to show both, I could remove that. This is just text. And then I have the action buttons. Play the song in Spotify, show the video in YouTube. And if we run all of this, oh, sorry, can run this one first. The simple one, this is still in Swedish. I just changed the text. I did check that with you, so this translation could be really way off. It is. Okay. So this is the name of my webhook. If you wonder why it says stats post, well, that's what I call it. So you might want to get that a proper name, meaningful name. And as I'm running that from my local PC, it's me that's running it. So you need to be authorized to just access the channel and write to it. But writing to channel, I mean, that's if you're allowed to send an email to the channel, then you would be allowed to do this, I suppose. But you can probably also restrict the webhook, but allow you to send emails with the email address. Yeah, I'm sure you can restrict that any way you want. And then finally, the more complex message. And what I did first here, I just Googled and I found a nice image of a red strat, and it did work. I put that on my Windows server in SAS. It did work, and it took me a while. And then I Googled, and I think I found some thread kind of pointed me in the right direction, because Azure is not running in my environment. Azure must be able to see the file. It cannot see, and this is kind of weird because I'm logged in a VPN or I'm in my environment and Teams is running on my PC, but it's actually happening somewhere else. So even though I'm logged in, everything, it must be a public image. There must be some other ways, but I Googled this and I couldn't find any thread, Stack Overflow, or what have you, that suggested more than, well, someone said it needs to be a public file. It needs to be accessible from Azure. Then perhaps, again, an admin could point out other sources of where files could reside that it could see. So that might also be set up. I don't know. But this is the way it looks anyway, and you can, I mean, you can control anything, text, font, whatever you need to do. So it's pretty nice. And again, the resources are pretty good. I don't know if this one works better. I just need to check that up. Yeah. Oh, this is the documentation. But so I'll remove that second link because this web page contained the designer as well. So I don't know what that really, the first one was. It was something that existed at that time.
Okay, macros. Can I change this one? There. My agenda. Do we need documentation? Something about setup, documentations of macros, validation, error handling. See how much I can get through, and a lot of demos. That's the plan. But first of all, are you using macros? Everybody's nodding. Know what it is? Good. Then one question aspect: are you just using your own macros, so you write them in your programs, or are you also sharing macros? Will you have somebody writing macros for you that you reuse? In terms of documentation, that's of course with your own programs. Also, when you return to a program 2 years later, 3 years later, it's quite understandable because you have made a lot of notes in there, right? Or maybe not, just writing the code. Just to go back to the start here, this is what we do in SAS is, of course, we don't steal a lot, we borrow a lot from, so this is borrowed from Ole Steen, and he's made a lot of good macros, but sometimes how do you know what they do? Do I have to read all through the 1,000 lines of code, or how do you do it? So that will be one aspect of what I'll go through. But first of all, I focus on the what's called autocall facility. I have links in the presentations. You can go in and read about that. Else, there are stored compiled macros where you can't see the code. And of course, you can also have macros that we're seeing here today that are just included in the program. But the idea is here that we have a macro that is stored somewhere that someone has made, and I'm reusing that. So how do we do that? We make a file per macro, .sas file. The name on the program should be the name of the macro. One macro per program. M-auto source could be an idea to set because that enables that it's not only looking in work library, so it looks in other libraries also. And M-recall is that when you run these options, I'll show you, it is not looking again. So when you run it, if you make a new macro into the library, it will not be shown unless you have this M-recall on. But that means every time it will look for all macros. So it can be, don't use it unless you have to. And just remember, if you set options to your SAS autos, all the default SAS autos will be removed, so you can't use them. So just remember that. And if you're not aware of I'm running on a local system, so C program files, SAS Home, SAS Foundation 9.4. That's a small program called SAS V9 CFG. And if we try to open that just with a notepad, it doesn't say very much. It says here, go to the NLS English and says V9 CFG file. So if I do that, the English one, and open that one, there are more options. And one is called Set SAS Autos. And here you can see, depending on what you have of license, that can be a lot of different file sources. So remember to set SAS Autos, because then they will be set. You will not override it in your code. But let's see how that looks. So I go into Enterprise Guide, and I set the options. I set pointing to, I put my macros in ctemp macros, and run that. It comes with an error because it says this macro test new macro is not there. And that is strange. I thought it was there. I called it X. So I try to see if I can change it. So now it's called test new macro. That's fine. It's in my folder. See if it's working. No, it's not working. Why is it not working? Because when I run this options and setup, it was not there. So if I enable the M recall option, it should work. Let's see. So now it says the macro is running. So that could be, remember that if you're working online or testing or making new, that could be an option to set. But that was it. Now I have access to my macros I've made. Maybe Ole has made these macros, and how do I use them or tell them to another or myself? What is a good idea? That is to make a description. So if you're not used to do that, then it's a good idea to make a standard for how you describe macros. So that is a description, maybe what variables are there, make an example, and enable help. What is that? I'll show you. Ole Steen has made some very clever thing in terms of that. Maybe also have a colleague to validate, does this make sense? Because it makes sense to me. I understand what I write to myself, but others don't. So it's always a good idea to have another one look at it. Do they understand what this macro does? And to help, if you're not aware of that, you can make a snippet. You know what snippet is? You are using it? Not everybody. I'll show you. But that could be a nice way when you have a good description, how to reuse that. So how does that look? Here's one, at least a start. Short description. There's room for some more. The macro has these parameters. Pos par one, key par, sample. You could call it this way, and then you have the start for the macro. So of course there's not complete text, but this could be a start for when I make a new macro. I use this. What is in, or you can say, we don't like to write very much, or we'd like to write as little as possible. That's at least the goal for me. So how could I reuse this an easy way? One way is to copy it and then use the, what was it? Control-Shift-A. There you got a new snippet. If you can't remember that, then you can go up into program, new snippet, and for example, call it new M for macro. I just very short paste the text in, and that can be anything here. So now it's just this. Say OK. So when I'm writing my code here and say, oh, now I need a new macro, instead of having this, I just write new M, and we can see it's coming here, enter, and then you have the text. So you can do that with everything. So if you have standards for something, put them in as snippets. And manage macros and snippets. If you have more here, you have it, and you can go in and edit and add it and so on. So extra little tip. Save. But it was running macros, that was the idea. So I want to run test DK holiday. Ole Steen, he's in education in Denmark. I don't know if you have met him. If you take a web course, you maybe will meet him. He's also teaching there, but he has made this DK holiday that lists the holidays in Denmark. I'm from Denmark, so that's why. Here we have the days with the different weekend days and holidays. But what about, I've heard something that I could remove the weekends in the macro, but how do I do that? But what if I write help equals yes? What happens then? Nothing. Maybe I should look in the log, see if there's something there. Oh, what is this? Macro description for DK holiday. Oh, here's a description called in open code. It makes a work table. You have year and weekend. Yes, no. Here's an example. So I can use that. So what if I copy this? And say no. And run that. It removes the weekend days and just shows, sorry, in Danish, but the holidays in Denmark. So, but the idea, of course, you can look at this macro, you will have that, what that does to find that, but that's not the interesting. The interesting here is, what did it do with the help? So let's take a look at that. So I'll find DK holiday. And you can see there's a lot of text here. It's not the interesting. The interesting thing is here in writing the macro, if it gets the parameter help, yes, what should it then do? Then it should call another macro, doc macro, with this parameter. Okay, so what does doc macro do? Another thing in terms of, you can say how to do this. If you have noticed, Ole Steen always start his macros, generic macros, with an underscore. Why? Because in a file system, then it's easier to see, oh, this is a generic macro. This is not a program. Program start here, it's called test something. So that, again, using some rules in how you do your coding can help you. So you know, is this a macro or is it just SAS code? But let's look at doc macro. Where is that? That is here. And you can look into that, and what we had some PRX change something, so we are using some regular expression and something, but the main thing is this one. And of course you can change that. But the idea is if your program starts with a slash and a star without any spaces, it pulls that information out. So what does that mean if we look at DK holiday? We had all this in the start. So the macro is just pulling that out. If you have made, you can see weekends here, that didn't came out, but it's not starting the line with this. Of course, you can change that and make your own rules, but this is a very simple one. So if you start like this, it will take out that information and put that in the log. So what's the next obvious question? How many macros do you have? How many macros do we share? One. So when I would like to know what are the macros, could I get a documentation of that? Should I then run this macro each time with the name of each macro? Ole Steen, he is lazy, so he thought, no, of course not. So he made one with an S, macros. So it says doc macros, where it just says, where should I look in my file system? I have put mine in C temp macro. So if I run that one, what does it do? It loops through. So now I have all the macros documented in the log. If I'd used help for this one, I could also find out that I could also have it in PDF. So if I run it as a PDF, what will then happen? Then it makes a PDF. And if I else has made a good way of doing this, I have a documentation of all my macros of this place that I could store or send to somebody if they needed a macro. Make sense? You will get the code so you can play with it and try and use it with your own macros. So wasn't that it? We had this one, we had this, we had the snippets, we had shown this. Validation and error handling. How should macros handle errors? Do you know what is happening when a macro sees an error? Or you can say, maybe it's like, first of all, what is a macro in its sense? Does a macro do anything? It can generate text, yeah. My word is it's a kind of wrapper. In itself, it does nothing. But I can control the flow of code and what's happening in there. So what does that mean when we see an error in SAS code? What does a macro say? It doesn't care, as long as it's not an error in the macro coding, because I'm just a wrapper around what is happening. So I'll try to show you that in a bit busy code, but let's see. So that also makes it possible for you to decide when you're running code. And as we know, when we meet data and so on, there's never errors. It's always working. And the ones delivering data to us, they never change anything without giving us the notice, or of course they do. So we'll, even if we have a program that is running today, tomorrow, somebody has changed something and it goes into errors. And of course, one way, if we just have a SAS program, normal SAS program, it will stop. What can we do with if we put it into a macro? We can handle that and make more smart decisions. So hopefully I'll show you that. And then just a curiosity that can be used also. We are always ending everything with a magic semicolon, right? Did you see my running of macro codes when I test DK holiday? I didn't use semicolon. Did you know that? A macro don't need semicolon. We can use that also. This is a very interesting program. Running a macro with some different 0 to 4 on OK. So let's see, what does validation do? Let me try to run the first one first. It writes a lot in the log. I'll take something will hopefully make sense later. Make it big. Can you see? So it tells me the parameter must be greater than 0. It's an arrow. It's red. Well, we have an arrow in the code. Or do we have an arrow in the code? And it says even if arrow, the macro continues. Okay. So even if we have arrows, it continues. So we can handle that. Then we have a sys arrow. I don't know if you know that. That's a code for if there's an arrow in SAS coding. Apparently it's 0 here. So meaning there's no arrow, but we have arrow in a log. This line will not be printed if 2. This line will not be printed if 2 or 3. Bingo, your macro will execute to the end. The macro is run label exit, sys arrow 0. Run a data step, sys arrow 0. Hopefully it makes sense when we look at the code. So what does it do first? We can do the if, so it running if, and then it puts an arrow colon. What does that mean? Put arrow colon. That means that I can control what it's writing in the log. So if you see here, there's an arrow or arrow colon, an arrow minus. What does that mean? That does mean if I look in the log, is that with a colon, it writes arrow colon. With the arrow minus, it doesn't write anything, but it's still red. So now I'm actually telling there's an arrow in my program, or I can do that because there was no arrow at this time, but it will still show up as red and saying there's an arrow, even if there is no arrow. So it's a way of controlling the log and the user. You can use that command. What's happening else? Just I put this arrow. So I have red in my log, but there's no arrow in my code. So I can control what is shown in the log. Before I go on, I think I'll write or run the next one. So what happens if there's data arrow? We have sys arrow equals 0. Then we have a file says help xx data does not exist. But the program continues. Line will not be printed if 2. No, it was 1. So what is now happening? So first of all, it's not running this one up here because I said it was a 1. So it doesn't do that. So it goes down to 1. There's no arrow yet. Then it's try to find the data set says help.xx. Last time I looked, it didn't exist. So of course it will make an arrow. That was also what we saw with the sys arrow. If we look in the log, it now said twin 12. There's an arrow in the set code. Is there an arrow in the macro? No, there's no arrow in the macro code. It was in SAS code inside the macro. So the macro will continue because it says, okay, you run some SAS code. That was a mistake. I continue in my macro code and say, I continue and run through the program. So of course we can use that. But how should we use it? If we now call it with the number 2, then it says the macro stops when %return is used. I don't know if you know that one, but we go down to parameter 2. %return means that now I'm telling the macro, stop running the macro. So even if there's more in the macro, I say, go to the end of the macro. So jump to the end and finish. So that's one way of handling. If I see an error, say, stop running this macro. It doesn't make sense anymore. Just end the macro. But could it be more interesting to do it in another way? For example, if I wanted to use that information, just ending a macro doesn't give me any options to use the information. So another way of doing that is if I use the 3 here, what happens then? It says it will not be printed if 2. No, I said 3. It cannot be 3. It says I go to exit, and the macro has run label exit and done something there. So what is that? So if I go back here to 3, there's just some text I've put in, and it says go to exit. That could be anything. It's just a label. So it looks through the macro program, find where is exit. Our exit here is in the bottom. So it skips the code, jumps to this label, and execute from exit to the end. So now I have a way of saying, and this you can use to jump. You can have more labels in your macro. So you can make as many as will and jump through code. But now it gives me one option of handling errors. Because now I can jump here. Now I'm just running a data step, but that could be anything down here, writing a message or something, or writing a mail to Teams with the Daniel's code saying, hey, there's an error in my job. Go get help. So what can I do in 4? Here I'm just running, it's going through, so it does, or instead of just jumping to end, I can also make some counters. So here I'm starting to call counting errors. So if I have a long macro, I could, for example, calculate that, or other things that I could use again in my macro, meaning that if I jump to the last one, just run that one. It's called now OK. It'll print the lines that are not in if, and it goes to the end. So what is that? Let's see. If errors is 0, so it has not met any errors, and the parameter is OK, bingo, your macro will execute. So now it puts this line in the code. So hopefully just examples of how does a macro handle errors, and how can we try to, if there are errors in my SAS code, how could we build a program and into the macro and handle these things and make it more intelligent, so we don't, maybe there are errors in our code or data or something, but we have a way of controlling it because our macro can handle errors, and you can use error codes and so on and counting and send relevant information back to yourself. Great. So go home and use it. You're not allowed to steal it, but you are allowed to borrow it. So go to the community page where you're placing the information afterwards. This of semicolon. Ole Steen he has made a small macro called vars. And first of all, I don't know what does that do, and is that usable? So run the help. It generates a comma-separated variable list based on blah 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 blah. So you have a table name, var range, all numeric character list of names you can set in. So if I use vars says help.class numeric, you all know the says help.class. So it lists the variables. And oh, I got an arrow. Why do I get an arrow? Because what does the macro do? It generates list, age, height, weight. And if you try to put that into a SAS code and execute it, what will it say? This line doesn't make any sense. There's no semicolon or anything. It's nothing I know of. So, but we can run that. So meaning if we now put that into SQL or whatever, create table, select vars, it's the same one. What will it then do? It will substitute this one with this. Now that suddenly makes sense. So if we run that, it generates a table with these variables. So if this table now had a new variable, character variable or numeric variable in it, you wouldn't have that in your code automatically. But now you have, because it says take all the variables that are numeric. So suddenly you have made your program dynamic by using a macro instead of writing your variables. So that was just another way of using it, and you can see you don't have the semicolon after because it's just put into the code and executed anyway.
Can you please show the vars macro code?
Pardon?
Can you please show the vars macro code? Macro code for this vars program.
Yeah.
How does it take of it? I learned also something.
Yeah, and that's I do every time Ole Steen have a presentation. I said, I've been coding in 20 years. I didn't know that one. That was a good one. So yes, we can always learn something. Vars, test vars. There it was there. And I will not go through it now, but yeah, it does something. Yeah. And again, you can see the important thing in the start here. It has the help inserted. That should actually maybe be put into my demo program. That was default in the program. But yeah.
Hardware you are actually using it is quite simple, and you can behind the scenes run really complicated program. For example, you could have a logistic regression model taking all the significant variables and list them, and
and then you can use and I don't know if you could probably also make other, if you made this for a more statistical procedure, you can change this macro and then reuse it in other use. Yeah. But of course, the idea is that you can, if you're very skilled, you can do macros that other can use, even if they are not that skilled in that area. Because I don't know, but that of using I think it's programming 3 that is normally something I don't go into deep with in how you do it, but yeah, you can write it. You get the code, so take a look at it. So I only have the links, and if there's any questions,